Thank you so much for joining me today, Jill. This is our Skill Short series. I'm super interested because today we're talking about disc tendencies and the energy that we expend throughout our day and how that correlates with our disc tendencies. So I'm gonna let you take it away and kind of explain that for us a little bit.
Well, thanks, Adam, and it's such a pleasure to be with you. So, as I thought about this question of how energy impacts our disc tendencies, and remember, our disc tendencies are the things that come most naturally to us, those ways that we behave that we kind of are almost subconscious, we're not even really thinking about it. And
Mm-hmm.
the first thing that came to mind to me was for those who have been our class, and we talk about an onion slide, which has kind of layers of what ultimately impacts our behavior.
Yep.
And there's a part of that which is our behavioral tendencies, which we all have. Again, there's things we don't even have to think about. But our actual behavior is what people see. And in between those two things are what we call this band of choice or golden arc of choice. And to me, the idea of energy and how we behave, which is our disc tendencies, um, really impacts that golden arc of choice. So when we're kind of in a pretty even keel state, we're pretty balanced. We're not super excited and energized about things, nor are we overwhelmed or feeling exhausted or stressed. For me, I feel that that band of choice is more accessible and I'm more able to think about, okay, this is what I naturally want to do in this situation. But is that really what I need to do? For example, I have a little bit of I tendencies, which for me sometimes is telling stories with friends. And so when I'm in a good space or kind of balanced and not overly energized or depleted, I can make those choices. You know what? In this conversation, it's not a space for me to need to tell a story or for me to add on to what they're saying, which is what sometimes comes naturally to me. So that band of choice is more accessible. But when I am stressed and overwhelmed, I notice that I don't seem to have as much access to that. And so those natural tendencies come out. And sometimes they may not be as well thought out or as well acted on as I would like for them. And same, it can be on either end of the spectrum as far as energy. Sometimes when we're so excited or so just jazzed to do something, again, at that space, it can be harder for me to be able to access that band of choice and say, okay, I'm excited, but maybe I need to sit and listen to what the other people have to say right now. And that may not be as natural for me at the time.
I love that explanation. It makes a lot of sense in the idea of like utilizing what comes natural, but also knowing that at certain times, even though it's natural, we might have to tone it back, right? And
Right.
when we're in a good even keel kind of space of utilizing that energy, we can do things like I would imagine for me, being able to listen better and to know that I don't necessarily need to find my way to make deep connection right now in thinking that that involves me sharing my story, like you mentioned. It might involve me actually creating deep connection by listening,
Yes.
and putting aside a little bit of my own tendency to want to share because I do have a
Yeah.
high tendency to want to share. I'm also have I think a bit higher I than you might even, Jill.
Maybe so. Maybe so. Making those connections. Yeah.
So I know for me that can be the case. Do you happen to have a specific story at all that you could share with us to help draw further connection?
Well, a couple of things came to mind, but immediately I thought about I one of my primary tendencies is the C tendency, which is very detail oriented, very process oriented, very high on task orientation. So getting things done, and
Yep.
not only getting them done, but getting them done right. So I want them to be done perfectly, and I want to make sure that I've exhausted every question that's there. And so that comes very naturally to me. And I like kind of thinking through, okay, here's what the way the process is right now, but let's think of how we might be able to do this more efficiently. I love spreadsheets. I love formulas. I want to figure out, can we automate things? So when I'm in a pretty even space, I'm able to kind of roll with that, and it is something that just comes naturally to me and I enjoy it. I'm kind of like in my groove.
Yep.
But I have noticed that when I'm starting to feel overwhelmed, maybe I'm having a lot of tasks, maybe someone else is asking a lot of questions of me, or I'm really starting to feel like I don't have a grasp of what I'm doing and I'm just feeling kind of overwhelmed is the best way to describe it, then I notice that I'm not able to see as clearly into those processes. It takes more effort for me to be able to walk through those things and especially to make decisions. And I really always have to stretch into the decision making. I appreciate in those who have primary D tendencies, decision making is something that comes very naturally to them.
Right.
For me, it doesn't. And it becomes even more work, and I have to expend even more energy to say, all right, this is what we want to do. And that can be, as you know, in work, we're working on a project and we're at a point where we want to present it. And if I'm depleted, it's hard for me to say, okay, yes, this is where we need to go. It can also be at the end of the day, and my husband says, what do you want to do for dinner? And I say, I honestly don't want to make any decisions. Please just say something.
Yeah.
So I see it there. Absolutely.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt there, but I was just thinking, just put a fork in my hand. I'll be ready to go.
Oh, totally. Just don't make me decide anything. And again, I think if I've had to make a lot of decisions during the day, that's not something that comes supernaturally to me. So it does take my energy to do it. And so by the end of the day, I'm like, okay, I'm at decision making. I've reached my maximum. And I've also noticed that I think in the S tendency is also something that comes very naturally to me. And what a part of S tendencies are, we like tradition, we like harmony, we don't like to rock the boat. We don't really love change. We can do it, but we don't love it. And so if I'm in a good space, I can kind of roll with the punches and kind of say, okay, we're going to move in this direction. I can see my way through that. But when I am in, a stressful state or an overwhelmed state, it requires a lot more of me to embrace whatever that thing is, or to even want to, whatever that change is going to be. It just takes more of me to do it because it doesn't come naturally to me. And I just have to be more focused and be very much more aware of trying to be intentional of, okay, this is how I'm responding. It's because, I don't love this and I'm probably exhausted. So I need to take some steps back. And again, that can be changes that are happening at work. And it can be, again, my husband finally makes a decision and says, let's eat here. And then he changes his mind and says, let's here. And I think, no, our plan was this. And now you've changed it. And I don't like it. And I'm, if I don't have a lot of resources and I'm pretty, low on my energy level, I might get a little snippy. I might not be as gracious with that little change as I would be if I were, fully balanced.
I can relate with all of you, everything you said there about that S tendency. I've been through those kinds of things with needing for change and having a slow process to change. And then eventually when I do, man, I look back on it and I go, what if I would have embraced this 2 months ago? What if, right? But try not to live in that space because it's not, it's not very healthy to live in the what if or the could have, should have, would have. But it is an option to say next time, maybe I can find my path a little faster, get through this a little quicker to say, okay, this change is something I can accept quicker. Jill, thank you so much for the real life examples. I absolutely love the stories of, how it is potentially when you're stressed and, just even making that dinner choice, because we run into the same thing as a family often. So
yes.
Thank you for sharing that with us today. And thank you for being part of today's Skill Short.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, Adam.